Hi guys, welcome to another video of TK Explains. Today in this video I am going to recap a 1980 romance drama movie named The Blue Lagoon, which is about the survival of a brother and sister and their relationship on an island. I hope you will enjoy the video. So let's start. A ship sailing towards San Francisco is first seen at the start of the film. A 9-year-old boy named Richard and a 7-year-old girl Emmeline are both cousins, and are both present on this ship. Along with Richard's father, the ship also has a cook named Patty. There were other people on this ship too. When the ship suddenly catches fire, Patty grabs the kids and jumps into a tiny boat to escape. Other people were also saved, but because of the smoke caused by the burning ship, they were unable to see one another, and Patty ends up being separated from them. Patty was now surfing alone in the ocean, joined by 2 little kids. When Emmeline opened her eyes one morning, she saw an island. She then shows Patty and Richard the location, which makes Patty very happy. Patty then moves the boat in the direction of the island. These 3 arrive at the island together. These 3 became quite happy because there were beautiful birds, fresh water to drink, and plenty of food there. At least they could stay here till they receive some help now. Later they find a can of rum that has been filled with rum. Richard finds a human skull there, revealing that someone has previously visited that place. When Patty sees all of this, he gets scared and leaves with the kids. He also forbids Patty and Emmeline from eating red berries because they are dangerous and can cause death. After that, Patty teaches Richard several skills, including building a house and fishing. One night while the kids were sleeping, Patty was drinking rum when he heard a noise coming from the opposite side of the island. The following morning, Patty visits the location where he notices flesh and blood on the stone. Upon seeing this, he instantly runs, and at night, he warns the kids not to visit any other sites on the island. However, there was something about that island that Patty was scared of. One night, Patty drinks a lot, and while the kids were asleep, he went to a nearby island. When Richard and Emmeline can't find the Patty in the morning, they start searching for Patty. Then they see Patty. Following this, they both take a boat to get to him, where they observe on seeing that the Patty is dead. The kids get extremely scared after seeing this. They both escape, leaving him there. Those kids felt quite alone after Patty left. Emmeline requests Richard to take her to another island at night. They leave that island the next day and move to a neighboring island, where they follow the lessons taught by Patty. They build a house for themselves there, and that is how they begin to spend their time. Many years passed by like this. Now they had grown up a lot and they had learned how to live here, and were both happy now. Due to physical changes in their bodies as a result of their maturation, they were now attracted to one another unintentionally. However, they did not understand this emotion, and no one was there to explain it to them, so it was totally new and strange for them. One day while Emmeline is swimming, she notices blood in the water and becomes worried. She then calls Richard right away. However, she discovers later that the blood was coming out from her body. Actually, she had her first period this time. Richard arrives there and notices blood in the water. Then he asks Emmeline what happened, but she asks him to leave. Later on, asking Emmeline why she was bleeding, Emmeline replied, "I don't know." Richard then assumed that Emmeline had been hurt and wanted to see her injury, but now she doesn't explain him anymore, due to which Richard gets disappointed that she hasn't told him anything and leaves from there, complaining that she keeps many secrets from him. As time goes on, they both get more attracted to each other. Emmeline used to constantly look at Richard's body, and Richard did the same. One day Emmeline hears drums playing in the woods. She goes there to see what's happening. Richard was fishing nearby at that time. Emmeline notices it and finds that the sound is coming from a different island that they had previously left. When she approaches the idol, she sees blood there. When Emmeline sees this, she runs in fear and goes to Richard to tell him everything. After hearing this, Richard scolded her for breaking the rule that they would never visit the other island's site. Since they were children, they had always followed this rule. But today Emmeline broke this rule. Then the same night when Emmeline was sleeping, she had a dream in which she saw Richard sinking and that he had died. When she woke up, she was horrified and ran to hug Richard. She said, "Promise me you won't leave me." And Richard replied, "I promise." During this, Emmeline also kisses Richard. But Richard cannot control his feelings and he courses Emmeline, which makes Emmeline angry with him and she leaves from there. Now it was night. Emmeline was asleep. Richard then approaches Emmeline and begins to touch her, but she wakes up and scolds him and pushes him away. Richard began to feel attracted to Emmeline, But Emmeline did not understand his emotions. In morning, Richard gets upset and starts leaving from there. Then Emmeline asks Richard where he is going, but Richard doesn't even respond to her. Emmeline then follows Richard to try and convince him, where she finds that Richard is engaged in activity. But Emmeline is unaware of his actions. She calls Richard. That makes him even more angry. One day, Richard spots a ship in the water. He instantly heads home since he had gathered wood there to use as a signal he may indicate by burning it down. Emmeline also saw that ship, but she did not purposely light the wood on fire. Emmeline doesn't properly respond to Richard when he asks the reason. Actually, Emmeline really liked this place and wanted to stay here now, but Richard had no interest in staying here. After so many years, he finally saw a ship and Emmeline let it go. After that, Richard builds a raft for himself and leaves for the island alone with some food and water. However, after leaving the beach for a short distance, Richard's raft breaks down and he returns. On his return, Emmeline teases him and says, "I know what you were doing that day." Richard responds, "This is wrong if you look at me silently." Then Emmeline says, "You also look at me silently when I'm without clothes." After this, Richard goes home and throws all of Emmeline's stuff out of the house, claiming that he created this house and she cannot get shelter here, due to which Emmeline had to stay in a little cave, and it was raining heavily. As a result of their argument, they both get separated and stopped communicating. Later, Emmeline walks to the statue to lay flowers, but while doing so, she steps on a poisonous fish which causes her to get terribly ill. After not seeing Emmeline for several days, Richard visits the cave where Emmeline used to live, where he sees her condition and asks Emmeline what happened. She responds that "My foot was put on a fish that looked just like a stone." Emmeline tells Richard to take him to God. She used to refer to that idol as God. Richard then takes Emmeline to the statue, where he prays to God that Emmeline recovers soon. Then after taking sufficient rest, Emmeline gets better. Now both of them started talking to each other. They started spending time back with each other and both of them were now living together. One day they were both sitting together and eating fruits. Then they both came close and after kissing each other, they both intimate with each other. For the very first time they had understood that emotion and felt it. After this they both were very happy, and they used to do it frequently throughout the day. Many days passes by in this manner. One day Richard discovers that Emmeline's health is not good and that she is unable to spend time with him. He tells her that "Don't you love me anymore? Don't you like me now?" Then Emmeline explains him that "It's not like that. I'm sick and feel like there's something in my stomach." After this, Richard puts his fingers on Emmeline's belly and he notices some movement. And he asks Emmeline, "How did you move your stomach like this?" Emmeline tells Richard that "I did not move my stomach. It's happening by itself." Actually, Emmeline was pregnant, but both of them were unaware of this. Richard hears a sound one evening, and he quickly runs and approaches the source of the voice, where he discovers that there was another person on the island other than these two. They were actually a permanent tribe from the island who would travel here on a regular basis to perform their rituals. And this time they also offered their enemy as a sacrifice to God. Richard notices this and instantly rushes in fear. He heard Emmeline scream as he was coming back. Actually, Emmeline was giving birth to her child. Richard helps her deliver the baby, and they are both overjoyed to see it. He then brings her to his home, but the child keeps on crying. Then Richard tells that the child is hungry and tries to feed him food and water, but a child so small could not consume all of this, now that neither of them understood what to do. Emmeline then picked him up in her lap and starts feeding him and the child calms down. He was a boy and they both named that child as Patty in memory of Patty. Richard then warns Emmeline not to visit another location on the island. Several months passes by in a similar way, and the child has grown up. One day when the three of them were playing on the beach, Richard's father finally reached that location. He notices Richard, but assumes that he is a local resident and moves on. Richard and Emmeline also noticed the boat, but they were happy here and no longer wanted to return to their home. One day, they arrive at the old island where they first traveled with the Patty. When they visit, they look at the old items to recall their past. In the meantime, the kid breaks the red berry and places it in the raft, which neither of them knew. When returning, the child unintentionally drops the raft's rudder into the sea. Emmeline then attempts to grab it but is unable to do so, so she calls Richard, who was left behind, to take some fruit. He approaches and jumps into the water, but Emmeline notices that the shark is following him. Now in an effort to save him, Emmeline throws his second rudder at the shark and kills it. Richard was saved, but the raft was now moving further away from the island because there was no rudder. They eventually travel to the middle of the ocean. They were worried because they had a young child with them and had no access to food or water. 2 days went by in this manner, when Emmeline sees the kid eating berry out of hunger, but now it is no longer useful. Then Richard picks up the berry and divides it in half, giving one half to Emmeline and the other to himself. They then decide that they too will devote their lives in sacrifice for that kid. But actually the kid was still alive, since he had just eaten a small amount of berries. He was only sleeping. These two, however, consume berries and sleep. Then Richard's father finally spots their raft and he finally reaches that raft. In the last scene, a man informs them that they are alive but only sleeping. And the movie ends here. I hope you liked this video. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more awesome videos like this. Thank you and hope to see you in the next one.